Why do you believe exactly what you believe? Have you ever stopped to consider it? You and I are defined by the actions that spring from our beliefs, spiritually, ethically, politically, socially. But how do we choose those beliefs? Or is it that they choose us? You're much more likely, for example, to be a Baptist or a Methodist or a Christian in general if you were born in the southern United States than if you were born in, say, the Shanghai province of China. In our country, we like to think we're independent and objective. We feel that we studied the facts and we make informed decisions. Yet we do inherit or absorb most of our beliefs. Then, those beliefs tend to harden in the process of life through phenomena such as confirmation bias. Here's an example of that. I once heard a friend say that in his opinion, most traffic problems are caused by young women in little red sports cars. Now, that seemed a little random to me, right? At some point, I would guess he got that notion from something that happened to him, and whenever he saw a young woman in a red sports car in the midst of a traffic problem after that, he thought, see, just like I said. But plenty of occasions surely went against his hypothesis. It's just that those didn't stick in his memory. So it really seemed to him that his personal bias was supported by the facts. It's amazing how confirmation bias, just by itself, reinforces our beliefs, right or wrong. How did you come to believe in Jesus? Was it the personal experience you had? Was it research? Or was it family inheritance? The biblical Gospels offer lots of examples of how people begin believing. In all four Gospels, Jesus begins his ministry by rounding up his disciples. I always wondered what that was like, because at first, nobody believed in Jesus. His family frankly thought he was crazy, right? But then came the part I always struggled with, to be honest. It seemed as if Jesus walked here and there, particularly where guys were fishing, and said, "Follow me," and people just dropped what they were doing and walked behind him. Now, I had no problem believing the miracles. Jesus did those, and that's why those books were written. Everyone knew those were miracles. We're supposed to be amazed. But I couldn't understand these 12 tough, hard-working men walking away from their lives to follow this guy who just happened to pass by, whistle, and say, "Come on, boys, let's go." Did Jesus make them believe instantaneously? Well, that didn't seem right. What made the disciples believe? Today's passage from John offers several models of faith. Here's the passage from the end of John's first chapter, as shown in the movie, The Gospel of John.
The next day, John was standing there again with two of his disciples when he saw Jesus walking by.
There is the Lamb of God.
The two disciples heard him say this and went with Jesus. Jesus turned, saw them following him.
What are you looking for?
Where do you live?
Rabbi?
This word means teacher.
Come and see.
It was then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so they went with him and saw where he lived and spent the rest of that day with him. One of them was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. At once he found his brother Simon.
We have found the Messiah.
This word means Christ. Then he took Simon to Jesus. Jesus looked at him.
Your name is Simon, son of John. But you will be called Cephas.
This is the same as Peter and means a rock. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip. And said to him,
Come with me.
Philip was from Bethsaida, the town where Andrew and Peter lived. Philip found Nathanael.
We have found the one whom Moses wrote about in the book of the law, and whom the prophets also wrote about. He is Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth.
Can anything good come from Nazareth?
Come and see.
When Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, he said about him, Here is a real Israelite.
There is nothing false in him.
How do you know me?
I saw you when you were under the fig tree before Philip called you.
Teacher. You are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel.
Do you believe just because I told you I saw you when you were under the fig tree? You will see much greater things than this. I am telling you the truth. You will see heaven open, and God's angels going up and coming down on the Son of Man.
As I've studied the Gospels more closely, I've come to understand that Mark came first, and in his Gospel, everything is crisp, concise, and immediate. He doesn't linger on a scene, but keeps things moving because his message is so urgent. He's not really interested in the little details. He's interested in what Jesus did next. Now then, Matthew and Luke followed his lead, and they write basically the same way. But John, the gospel that came later, does fill in some of these items. This scene is such a great example. We learned that some of the disciples, who were fishermen, actually started out as followers of John the Baptist. So we know they were searching for something. And John told them, This man I've just baptized, he's the Lamb of God. This is also the next day, John tells us. So they've had time to watch Jesus a little bit. Now, notice how Jesus approaches them. He says, What are you looking for? It's an essential question. If a fisherman is hanging out with a wilderness preacher, he's looking for something. And the answer is surprising. They stammer, Where are you staying? It sounds like a way of asking for an invitation. Show us where you're putting up. Jesus says, Come and see. It's always important to notice even the simplest words of Jesus. He says two things so far. What are you looking for? And come and see. The two disciples spend the rest of that day with Jesus, several hours, and you can imagine there are some intense conversations. We're told one of the men is Andrew. The other isn't named, which causes some to suggest it's John himself. Andrew goes to find his brother Simon. He says, Guess what? We found the one the prophets were always talking and writing about, hundreds of years ago. Andrew shows the energy and enthusiasm of a new believer. He has to tell somebody he cares about. Jesus gives Simon the name Cephas, or Peter, the rock. Notice that Jesus decides to go somewhere new. He's not much for putting down roots. He's always thinking about where to go next. So he's ready to move, and he says to Philip, "Follow me." Now there's the phrase we're familiar with. We'll come back to it in a minute, but remember those words, "Follow me." At this point, a new character enters the story. His name is Nathanael, and everyone who studies the Gospels is curious about Nathanael because John seems to have him as one of the 12, but neither Matthew, Mark, or Luke ever mention him. There are various theories about this. He could be Bartholomew, the one the other Gospels list instead. It's also true there were lots of disciples. Maybe it was kind of fluid who was following Jesus at a given moment. We can't be sure, but Nathanael is the one who says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" It's kind of a snobbish thing to say. To Nathanael, Jesus comes from the bad side of town, or maybe some no-account village, which would make him a no-account teacher. You could call it GPS snobbery. But that's what Nathanael believes. He has a preconception that a man is no better than his zip code. Now that makes his experience so interesting. Notice first how Philip answers him. Instead of arguing, he says, "Come and see." He echoes what he has heard from Jesus. Andrew and Philip both grab somebody and say, "We found the chosen one," and they echo Jesus, "Come and see." This is what a disciple does. He doesn't work on convincing arguments. He simply says, "Come and see," something anybody can do, and he lets Jesus do the rest. What Jesus does is, he offers a warm greeting. Here's an Israelite who's honest. And Nathanael's still kind of surly, says basically, "You don't know me." And Jesus says, "Well, I saw you sitting under a fig tree earlier." Now, that wouldn't make any list of Jesus' top 10 miracles. Really sharp eyes. But Nathanael's amazed. Look at what he blurts out. "You're the Son of God. You're the King of Israel." And I think here, Jesus laughs. The Bible never says he laughs, but you can read it between the lines in certain passages. He says, "What? You're impressed because I saw you under a fig tree? You're going to see much better stuff than that. Trust me on this." The reasons we believe are always personal, even if they're a little lightweight. Nathanael had a shallow perception of people from Nazareth, and now he may have a shallow perception of the scope of what it means to be the Son of God. But it's perception. It's a beginning. Jesus begins with people where they are. All these men react in different ways as they come to belief. Notice Jesus never asks any of them to simply believe. He comes at them with a question and two commands. Number one, what are you looking for? And of course, that's a question to ask ourselves. Number two, come and see. This is an invitation not to thinking something, not to accepting a doctrine, but to do something, to investigate, to come on an adventure. And number three, he says, follow me. To come and see is a tentative thing. It's to explore. It's to find out, to start making up your mind. But to follow is to walk in a definite direction, to walk in the steps of a master. It's no secret that most of us inherit our beliefs, and that's a good thing. The best thing we could give to our children. But at the end of the day, a belief can't merely be inherited. It must be taken and possessed. It must become our own, be personalized. Simon Peter could have told Andrew, I'm glad you found the Messiah, brother. I'll believe in him as I stay here and fish. You can tell me how it goes. That's, of course, not what the Bible means by belief. In our time, we think of faith as an idea we carry with us in our heads, sort of something we sign on to, an intellectual agreement. Thus, You would look up in the sky and believe the great Melinda could push someone on a tight wire in a wheelbarrow. But the Bible's kind of belief means you're willing to climb into the wheelbarrow. That's full and complete trust. That's biblical belief. That kind of faith must come from living, from following. The hour I first believed, really believed, it was because of some miracle I'd read about in a book. It was a bit shallow. But that's all right. I left the rest to Jesus, and we're still walking together. I hope you are too. That's the daily, forever life of believing. Thanks for listening.